So, welcome back to the Policy and Resources Committee. First item on the agenda is apologies. Have we had any apologies?
Councillor Bell and Councillor Hanratty.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 to 10. You can see the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 25th of July. Anything that needs to be raised from the minutes? No? Can we accept them as an accurate record?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, they're approved. Thank you. Item 4, the membership and structure of the authority. Ria?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is in respect of the membership and structure of the authority. There were 2 vacant posts on the authority due to councillors from Sefton and St Helens Council leaving the authority. It's now been confirmed that Councillor Christopher Page has been appointed onto the authority by Sefton Council. In terms of the committee structure, it's proposed that Councillor Page would be approved to sit on the Community Safety and Protection Committee, replacing his previous predecessor, and to appoint him onto the Audit Committee, with it incurring a move for Councillor Finneran from Audit Committee to the Scrutiny Committee. Following consultation with the Chair, it's also proposed that Councillor Page would be appointed as the Chair of the Local Pension Board as a direct replacement of his predecessor, although this role wouldn't attract an additional responsibility allowance. The second vacant post in regards to St Helens Council, I'm expecting an update and we'll bring that to Community Safety on the 30th of January, once they're in a position to confirm who will be the appointed member. The only matter for members to be able to confirm to me following the meeting is who would be the chair of the Scrutiny Committee moving forward if the recommendations are approved. The second point is in relation to questions on discharge of functions. At the AGM every year, members of the authority from each constituent council must be nominated to deal with any questions in respect of the Fire and Rescue Service. Previously at the AGM, it was Councillor Linda Maloney who was appointed as the nominated representative for St Helens Council. Obviously, sadly, following Linda Maloney's passing, I've recommended that it would be Councillor Jeannie Bell to be the new appointed representative from St Helens. And the third aspect is in regards to the independent person. Previously at the authority, a report was presented to members in respect of seeking to recruit a second independent person alongside Anthony Boyle, who had been undertaking the joint role of co-opted member and independent person. Following the approval from the authority to do that, we presented a advert and went through a recruitment process. We'd be seeking approval to appoint the successful candidate of Mr. Gary Wormold. I've also considered the position that although it was originally said we'd have a second independent person, on reflecting on Mr. Boyle's current role, as he's been with us for some substantial time, felt it was more appropriate for him to undertake just a single role and remain as a co-opted member on audit and scrutiny, but to relieve him of his duties as an independent person, and that the appointment of Gary Wormold would mean we have our one independent person, plus we're working with the local authorities to then seek to have a pool of independent persons should we require any additional independent persons. Therefore, I'm asking members in terms of the recommendations on page 11 to note the changes to the membership, including the appointment of Councillor Christopher Page to the authority, approve the appointment of Councillor Page onto the Community Safety and Protection Committee and Audit Committee, approve the movement of Councillor Finneran from Audit to Scrutiny Committee, approve the appointment of Councillor Page to the Chair of the Local Pension Board, request that a nomination for the Chair of Scrutiny Committee is determined, approve the change in the nominated councillor to Councillor Bell for the questions on the discharge of functions for St Helens Council, and approve the appointment of independent person Gary Wormold and the termination of the combined role of Mr Anthony Boyle as co-opted member and independent person, and that Mr Anthony Boyle continues in his role as co-opted member of the Audit and Scrutiny Committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Marley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. All of that agreed, and I would propose that Councillor Finneran would take up the chairmanship of the scrutiny panel on moving across. That's the balance. And with regard to our colleague Anthony Boyle, we thank him very much for all he has done. He's brought a lot actually of outside knowledge and experience, magistrate and that sort of thing, to this authority. And I think continuing his role as a co-opted member of the authority would again bring a lot of knowledge and experience and a different view, a different perspective that we have as elected members. But also it's interesting and useful to have somebody who will be able to deal with potential disciplinary independence issues which are more arm's length, which I think these days Anthony could not do. A little too close to us all, fantastic though he is. And it would be in the best interests of the proper operation of the authority to work that way with Mr Wormold, and we would welcome him to as an independent, not the authority, but as our independent member, and to attend whichever committees he would choose to do as a an observer in that respect. Thank you.
Thanks for those comments, Liz. Any other questions? Comments? No? Okay, there's recommendations A through F. Are we happy to accept those recommendations, including the what Les proposed?
Yes, please.
Is that accepted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on then, we've got item 5, which is a Treasury Management Interim Report. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. This report ensures that the authority meets the requirements of the CIPRA Code of Practice on Treasury Management and the CIPRA Potential Code for Capital Finance in Local Authorities. The code requires the authority to review its treasury management activities during the year to ensure they are consistent with its approved treasury management strategy and have remained within the approved prudential indicators. This report meets that requirement and outlines the treasury management activities and performance for the first half of the financial year. The interim report can be found on page 21 and the executive summary on page 22. Paragraph 7 summarises the key points on the performance so far. There's no new borrowing has been arranged in the first half of 24-25. We may need to borrow 8 million before the end of the financial year, and we will delay this borrowing as much as we can until we can achieve a more favourable interest rate. The financial investment stood at 54 million, with associated income of 942,000 received in the first half of the financial year. The Bank of England base rate decreased from 5.25 at the start of the financial year to 5% on the 1st of August, and longer term Public Works Loan Board rates have seen minimal change during the first half of the year, increasing by 0.06% from 5.06 at the start of the year to 5.12 at the 30th of September 2024. The table on page 25 shows an analysis of the authority's investments. The current investment stood at 54 million as of the 30th of September, and this included the 36 million firefighters pension grant. 87 million pounds of the investments are invested with local authorities. There are no limits on the amounts invested with central government and local authorities, as these are considered to be highest credit quality. I can confirm Treasury Manager activity for 24-25 has been carried out in compliance with the relevant codes and statutes and within the borrowing and treasury management limits approved by the authority as part of the budget setting process in February. Members are asked to note the contents of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Mitch.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on page 34 in relation to the breathing apparatus being rephased. Presumably this is replacing equipment that's coming to the end of its life, so just seeking assurances there's no risks associated with delaying that.
Sorry, Chief, we've moved on to the next report, sorry, Councillor, but
Right.
happy for the Chief to take that question now.
Would you prefer me to pick up in the next?
Sorry.
Okay, any other questions then? No, I think it's a fairly straightforward update
Treasury
on
management.
the Treasury Management Report, yeah.
Yeah.
I had a quick look. The only thing to bear in mind obviously is that the Bank of England are likely to, the interest rates are likely to come down, so that's going to have implications for borrowing costs. I'm sure that's all in hand.
Just, so the Chairman of the Bank of England is indicating potentially 4 decreases in the interest rate next year. Institutional investors are predicting potentially 3, so it will take it down another 0.75% or a whole percent next year.
Okay, so can we agree the recommendation then? That we note the contents of the report?
Agreed, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 6 is the financial review for July to September. So back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. This is the financial review report which covers the period July to September. The purpose of the report is to provide members with an assurance that the approved budget remains robust and that the current forecast of expenditure can be contained within the available resources. The report can be split into 4 areas: revenue expenditure, capital expenditure, reserves and treasury management. The revenue position is covered in paragraph 7 to 17 on pages 31 to 34, and if we look at the revenue position, the net budget requirement of 74.191 million remains consistent with the original budget. After reviewing income and expenditure, officers have identified the following savings. A table can be found on page 33. £150,000 savings of the firefighter employee budget, and this is because of a number of roles being paid out of grant income and a number of personnel not being at the top of their grades. £350,000 saving on non-firefighter employee budget, and this is because of a number of personnel not being at the top of the grade and due to recruitment and retention issues. And an additional £300,000 savings from the reduction in the local government pension scheme due to MFRS pension fund being in surplus with Merseyside pension fund. As a result of the one-off savings, this report has identified a saving of £800,000. Members are asked to approve the utilising this saving to fund an increase in the revenue contribution to capital outlay in order to marginally lower the required level of capital borrowing in 24-25. We move on to capital. The capital programme has been updated for an additional 7.174 million, and the summary can be found on table 35. The additions include 7.1 million of national resilience assets to refresh USAR assets, the urban search and rescue assets. There's £86,000 on ICT hardware and additional security measures at the Training Development Academy, as agreed within the Revenue and Capital Outturn report. 2.2 million of rephrasing of capital schemes, and this consists of ICT hardware and networks, operational equipment and the vehicle replacement schemes. In total, £7.174 million increase is funded from specific resources, Home Office grants, revenue and reserves. The level of required borrowing is reduced by 1.1 million due to the increase in capital receipts from the sales of the old Training and Development Academy and Croxted Fire Station. The 5-year capital programme borrowing requirement is currently 37.1 million. In relation to reserves, the table on page 47 outlines the reserves movement in the quarter, and this was a drawdown from reserves, a drawdown from reserves of £95,000. The movement was made up of the £71,000 previously mentioned for the additional security measures at the Training and Development Academy, £13,000 work on the CFRMS application, and £11,000 on ICT consultancy research into ICT outsourcing / insourcing. As previously advised, 974,000 was identified during the 24-25 budget setting process as a contribution to the capital investment reserve to fund the capital programme, inflationary pressures, and in addition 1.8 million was identified during the 23-24 outturn process to offset capital pressures and reduce planned borrowing to free up revenue budget associated with debt servicing costs. It is recommended that the total 2.783 million is used to fund capital expenditure and reduce the level of borrowing within the year. In terms of Treasury Management, we've just covered the Treasury Management report previously, but I would like to highlight the authority continues to buy in Treasury Management services from Liverpool City Council and some key details to note. The Bank of England voted on the 1st of August to cut the bank rate by 0.25% to 5%, and this was the first cut in interest rates from the Bank of England after the rate had been held at a 16-year high of 5.25% for 12 months. The Bank of England has since cut the interest rate further to 4.75%. The CPI measure of inflation has rose by 2.2% in the 12 months to August 24, unchanged from July, while the current CPI measure remains slightly above the Bank of England CPI target. The inflationary spike of recent time continues to be felt across the economy, with those increases factored into the base of the current CPI measure. The CPI measure has been anticipated to fall below the target in the second half of 24-25. As previously stated, the authority envisages no new long-term borrowing of 8 million may be required, but no new long-term borrowing has been arranged in the first half of 24-25, and the authority had investments of 54.2 million as of the 30th of September 24. The authority has outstanding debt of 33.7 million, and current market conditions continue to be unfavourable for any debt rescheduling. The recommendation is that members approve the proposed revenue and capital budget realignments, approve the use of the 0.8 million employee savings to fund capital expenditure and reduce the level of borrowing, approve the use of 2.7 million capital investment reserve to fund capital expenditure and reduce the level of borrowing, and instruct the Director of Finance and Procurement to continue to work with budget managers to maximise savings in 24-25 and use any savings to reduce the level of capital borrowing. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Do we have any questions?
Councillor Mason, would you like me to read this question?
I refer you to my previous question.
So do I have any concerns about the rephrasing of the purchase of breeding apparatus? No, not the slightest. We have made some amendments to some of the kit and equipment that we've got, so that it has been upgraded over the period as well. But there's a reason why we've chosen to rephrase it a little. First one being, and I won't go into some of the specifics for obvious reasons, but the user experiences in some services who have procured new breathing apparatus kit and equipment has been a poor one, and as a result of that, we want to be assured that when we go to the market, we are going to get sets which are fit for purpose for our operational firefighters. Equally, we are anticipating some advancements in some of the telemetry post Grenfell. So again, it's about timing that so we don't purchase kit that subsequently requires a refresh, or we regret because the advancement is taking place, and we're expecting that certainly in the next 12 months. And we are also, and you would understand as well, trying to the best of our ability, align procurement with the rest of the Northwest. So we procure for the Northwest, or certainly a number of services within the Northwest, and then that enhances our procurement power and to ensure that we get the best possible deal for the authority. So those things combined, as suggested, we just rephrase it into the forthcoming year, and then we will act accordingly at that point.
So there's sufficient life in the existing equipment to take account of potentially any delay that there might be as well.
Yes, absolutely, there is. Yeah.
Councillor Bowden.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that report. It's the backward-looking report, but this is the final meeting. We'll be receiving our financial figures from the department on the 19th, 20th, supposedly. I understand from the meeting I had yesterday that we're going to be given the £5 flexibility on our precept. Now, interesting, I wasn't aware of this. That's an average, that's at band D, and it's less and more of the different bands. I wasn't aware of that, but by the by. And that's worth about 6% to us?
Yeah, roughly about 6%.
So that's roughly a 6% on our to the precept. So that will help us a lot to continue to stay. You'll have heard the police service talking about, the implications of the financial settlement for them as balanced against their previous pay settlement. It's on the table now. I also understand, I know that there's another item coming up about pay policy, but while we're on financing, the FBU has submitted the pay claim, not offer, claim, but this is without figures. I think it's aspirational. It sort of sets out and I think like them, like us, like the NJC of whom we are part, they'll want to see what the picture is with regard to the, you know, the national public sector pay settlements. And we will, as part of the NJC, and Mr. Murdoch sits as the principal advisor to the NJC. What a luxury for us. You know, we just watch and seek to ensure a proper pay settlement for our fantastic staff that does not underestimate their worth, certainly in terms of the rest of the public sector and very much the police service, but remains affordable for the people of Merseyside. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, just to re-emphasise a couple of points there. So, we have secured the £5 council tax flexibility, which is real positive and certainly something members will recall we've lobbied for this year, and self-evidently that's been the outcome. In relation to the kind of financial pressures brought to authority in relation to pay, you know, CPI in September was 1.7. You know, CPI currently stands at 2.2. You know, my understanding is the fire brigade union have sought to secure a 5% pay rise, which, you know, becomes quite challenging for the authority based on the CPI arrangements that were in the grant, which will likely follow in to reflect that. But a real positive in respect of securing the £5 council tax flexibility. All of those things will come back to the authority in budget strategy, planning processes and budget strategy day. Mike will take members through the financial considerations and in effect provide a budget which sees us through for the next 12 months. We are expecting a 2-year comprehensive spending review to follow, if not more than 2 years, which would give us a little bit more a better ability to kind of forecast and plan future expenditure. But a good outcome to a great lesson degree, but like anything, it comes with a whole raft of other caveats around different grants changing and so on and so forth. And that detail will only come likely on the 19th of December for us, and hence we will be in a position to update members better in January.
Any other questions? Okay, on page 29 we have recommendations A through D. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 7 is the statement of assurance. Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. To request members consider and approve Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority's statement of assurance for 2023-24 for publication on the website. And again, this is a backward-looking document, really. So some of the things that we've done more recently won't necessarily be contained within it. And the recommendations recommend that members note the information contained within the report, approve the authority's draft statement for 2023-24, and if approved, the statement of assurance to be signed off by the chair of the authority and the chief fire officer. By way of background, the Fire and Rescue Services National Framework, published in 2012 and revised in 2018, sets out the requirements for fire and rescue authorities to publish an annual statement of assurance. It says fire authorities must provide an annual statement of assurance to their community and the government on the financial, governance and operational matters, and that's what's contained within it. What we've sought not to do is duplicate a lot of the documents that we've already produced that are accessible via the website, because the document would be significantly difficult for members of the public to read, but the links are there to navigate their way through to the pertinent documentation should they require to view it. And as I say, the statement of assurance itself is from pages 67 through to 91. And you know, it goes on to detail some of the things that you would want it to say. So it talks about how, you know, the outstanding performance of the authority over that period, the fact that it's referenced by His Majesty's Inspectorate, and you know, it references our outstanding performance in relation to prevention, responding to major incidents, and the best use of resources. It then goes on broadly to detail our leadership message, our values, our purpose, the activities we've taken in relation to all of our functional areas, prevention, protection, response, and so on and so forth. But it provides the public and government with the reassurance that this is a well managed, governed fire and rescue authority, and I'm happy to take any questions on any particular aspect of the statements of assurance. Members.
Any questions on the statement of assurance?
Those are all these cases where I have to put my head on the block, you know. Take responsibility.
Okay, alright, so can we agree the recommendations A through C then on page 63? Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8, corporate risk register, April to September.
Thanks, Chair. And again, I'll talk through the purpose of the report and the recommendation, but members will be aware we're in the process of refreshing the corporate risk register, and that will be in place for 2025. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the current risk contained within the corporate risk register, the state of the risk and the associated control measures, including any updates for the period April to September 2024. And it's recommended that members approve the updated risk register, which incorporates the current status of those risks. And there are things for us to consider, members, particularly in light of some of the changes which Councillor Barden referenced earlier. Clearly we are not quite there around the kind of budgetary requirements placed on the authority. We will have a little bit more detail post-December and into January that will inform some aspects of the corporate risk register. We're also anticipating potential governmental changes in regards to governance of the fire and rescue service in its broader sense. So there is deliberations within government around either the fire and rescue service remaining within the Home Office or moving into MHCLG. Clearly that will have considerations for us in the longer term. Some other things which are emergent risks which we will ensure are incorporated into the refresh are cyber threats. So we know that there's a bigger and more challenging environment that we operate within now, and certainly we have got robust arrangements in place, members, I can assure you of that. But we have got a whole raft of scrutiny that will follow around cyber. And then we've got a number of emerging risks which are all covered off in our community risk management plan refresh for 2024-27, which references things like alternative fuels, contaminants, wildfire and flood. So they will all be factors which are kind of captured in the risk register in one way, shape or form. That said, I'm happy to take any kind of questions or comments on any aspects of the risk register as it stands.
Councillor Barden.
Yes, thank you. And as the Chief has alluded, there are some constitutional risks. Also, the Inspectorate will be taking on inspection of governance. And governance, we just have to get assure ourselves that we are excellent, outstanding in terms of our governance and the authority's governance. And that might be issues that we want to address. We're doing a piece of work with the Combined Authority on acceleration of the high-rise remediation plan. The proposal is that we would host a unit. There will be, we will be absorbing risk in terms of our finance and reputational risk on taking that on. And we're doing a piece of work on behalf of the Combined Authority and the other districts. It's important work that we do, but we ought to, I don't suggest that we actually have to put it or record it in the register at the moment. We have to be aware of it, and we have to watch that external piece of work which we will be hosting on behalf of Combined Authority. Also down to what are our risks? Our risks, one of the, it's to report if you like, one of the things that was helping us with regard to the Combined Authority was the whole issue of, as discussed, coterminosity. And part of the Combined Authority is not in Merseyside. There is going to be a review of that. And so there's a review started within whichever department ends up hosting fire as to what the whole thing is about coterminosity. And it may well be that that will be left aside and that there's other settlements. So there's a lot, there's a new government, a lot's in flux. A lot of changes are there and coming, and so we as this authority and laser focus on what's important to Merseyside Fire is where we sit and who we work with. and how we do it. And there's a lot of changes coming. Next year is going to be a fast-moving year. Very pleasing that we've got the £5 flexibility. I don't think we had that last year. We may have had it the year before that. But it's very helpful, and it's a definite sign that the people at the Home Office and hopefully wherever we will be are conscious of our financial pressures and have enabled us to do that. And so we will work through the FSMC, lobbying ministers. We've got close connections with outgoing and incoming ministers on where we are at the moment. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Sure, if I can just
Go on.
one slight comment just in relation to Councillor Barham's reference to the remediation plan. So it's linked into Grenfell Phase 2 recommendations, and it's certainly being driven by the Deputy Prime Minister to remove unsafe cladding from buildings which were originally 18 metres and above. It's now been extended to cover 11 metres and above. There's a considerable amount of work to be done between now and 2029, which is the point at which cladding should be removed from every building, or unsafe cladding should be removed from every building falling into that categories. But as Councillor Barham said, we will be picking up some lead responsibilities for that work from a Merseyside and a City region perspective, and with that comes a modicum of risk which we will ensure is captured within the community risk register as we move forward.
Okay, it's recommended that members approve the updated corporate risk register as set out on page 93. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Item 9 is the service delivery plan July to September update.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to members scrutinise the performance of Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service against the objectives and performance targets as set out in the service delivery plan for 2024-25 for the period of July through to September 24, and it's recommended that members approve the attached service delivery report for publication on the website. There's a lot of detail contained, members, in this particular report, and I'm happy to be drawn to any specific aspects of that. But what I will say is, the report back of the service delivery plan covers off a multitude of the areas of our work, from the functional planning processes to the performance of the authority in relation to key performance indicators, and extends into the work that we've done post Grenfell, and certainly some of the work that we've done based on HMIC FRS recommendations for the service, all of which is captured within the service delivery plan. But if I draw members' attention particularly at our performance to pages 149 onwards, you will see, and again I don't intend to label it members for obvious reasons, but you will see a variety of performances captured from the number of calls received, number of accidental wildfires, and so on, which is, certainly in the main is green, because our performance is really high, with fewer incidents of fires and other types of incidents occurring across Merseyside, and we know the blight that has on our communities. That extends to antisocial behaviour fires, right through to accidental dwelling fires. There are a couple of areas where we are focusing in. False alarms, funny enough, that you just had some insight into the work being undertaken in that particular area, because there are more alarm systems in place now than there were, and as a result of that, it gives us some challenges to maintain and be able to respond effectively to that. And sickness absence is slightly above, certainly from an operational perspective, than the 4% that the authority have set. But actually, again, I know members have scrutinised some of this work through the scrutiny committee. You will see us benchmarked against other fire and rescue services, and our performance is exceedingly good in comparison with other services. So whilst we're still aiming to draw it in the 4%, it is work in progress, and we have robust arrangements in place. But some of the things that I particularly want to draw members' attention to, we've seen a continual downward spiral in respect of accidental dwelling fires. Again, that's reiterated in this period too, from a really strong performance last year. So the fact that we are again seeing accidental dwelling fires reduce, unfortunately, despite that, because you think there would be a correlation between accidental dwelling fires going down and fire deaths going down too. We've got 4 fire deaths, accidental dwelling fire deaths to date. that's against one last year, which is self-evidently the best performance we've ever seen on record. And 4 is still, you know, a good performance when we've considered it in the kind of context of previous performance years, but not indirectly comparable with last year, and again remains a focus for us. But our accidental dwelling fires are reducing, so self-evidently you would think that accidental dwelling fire deaths would follow over a period. As I say, you know, outside of the performance, the report itself goes on to detail some of the work within the functions of the authority, so prevention, protection, response, people, legal services, etc., democratic services. It also does capture some of the work done in relation to the HMI's recommendations and so on. So, members, I'm happy to take any specific questions which draw me to any part of it, but there's a high-level overview of our performance to date, and we are on track to, again, exceed performance as we have done in the previous years.
Councillor Byron.
Yes, thank you. As I've said before, this report and this type of report, this is the way that members keep their finger on the pulse of outcomes and the standards and quality of the service that we provide to people of Merseyside. With the testing by the inspectorate is that much more important, but we know how we are performing ourselves from year to year and by comparison with our other metropolitan partners. It's interesting, this last week members went in and had a visit to Control, and we saw the enhanced alert proposals, which aren't live yet, which will come in, which will help to shave quite significant percentages off the call out time, which will make, I mean, and as it often is, the speed and weight of attack on a fire incident, this will, it should be, obviously we will review it in the outturn and see how it actually works. But the prospect is that this will make us even more efficient and using technology, and that's where we're going, isn't it? Using technology to improve the way we do what we do and keeping our people and the public safe.
Look, only to reiterate the point, you know, we know that from a public's perspective, the thing that they want from a fire and rescue service, you know, more than anything else, is a quick response. So enhanced mobilisation will deliver, and you know, I suppose trying to kind of be, I suppose, sensible in regard to what performance improvements it will make, but it has the potential to knock maybe 30 seconds off a response time because the crews are already making their way to the appliances and they are out the door more rapidly than they would do ordinarily. That combined with, as you see in the report itself, the speed at which the personnel in fire control are dealing with and handling the call means we were quicker to respond. And so, you know, self-evidently a key request, a key ask of the public is improved on the basis of the changes that we're envisaging and we are contained within the CRMP.
Just to report also that the architecture of that proposal has been heavily consulted with the FBU as well.
Thanks. Okay, Councillor Makin.
Thanks, Chair. Just in relation to the attendance standards, obviously fantastic figures of 96.4% within 10 minutes. Just in terms of the small percentage that isn't, is there any value in actually producing some figures to look at those? Because obviously if it's 10 minutes and 15 seconds, then that's not a major issue. But if you're having some that are significantly longer than that, there could be indicators where there might be certain areas, certain times when there's issues that we need to look at.
Yeah, look, I'm more than happy, Councillor Makin, to draw that into scrutiny. But to reassure you, the Performance Management Group review those incidents very regularly because you know, that I suppose that's it determines a number of things, but self-evidently we will not make 100% because sometimes it's down to the individual on the call. So they provide us with inaccurate information, and they will say it's, you know, the incident is in a field in Formby, you know, and things like that will result in us having some delays until we identify exactly where the location is. So we will mobilise, we'll be on the road, and we're still trying to draw information in from the caller to make sure that we are attending as effectively as we possibly can. So sometimes there are things outside of our gift. what I would provide some reassurance is in relation to that scrutiny, we've just changed the way we would mobilise to water instance, because actually the way that we previously mobilised is the crew would put on water kit and then mobilise. As a result of the scrutiny that we've applied, now one kit crew is doing that. So one crew is on station putting the water kit on, the other one is going directly to sea, which means we are in attendance quicker, but also we are able to intervene in a quicker manner. So some of that learning that is drawn out from that scrutiny allows us to change policy or improve the procedures that we adopt, and hence the reason why we do it. But I'm more than happy for members to scrutinise that small number of incidents where it's extended beyond our response standards to kind of understand fully what the circumstances were. Is it areas, or is it down to the call type, or is it down to the call handler? And certainly we can do that as part of the scrutiny arrangements.
Any other questions? Okay. So it's recommended that members approve the service delivery plan report for publication on the website. Is that agreed?
Can I just ask if that matter is going to be formally referred to scrutiny? That's what you'd like.
Oh, the outliers,
Yeah.
those that are outlying, yeah.
Okay, item 10, pay policy for 2024. Chief?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, this is, like the statement for assurance, this is a regular visitor to the authority in and around this time, which is in relation to transparency code. It's about us detailing our pay policy and the differentials contained within. So the purpose of the report is to request members approve publication of the annual pay policy in line with the requirements of section 38 of the Localism Act 2011, and it's recommended that members approve the publication of the pay policy and note the pay awards for 2024 have now been agreed and implemented, covering all of our grey, green and red book colleagues. Self-evidently, grey book colleagues were addressed relatively early, but green book and red book colleagues have been agreed subsequently. The content, and Mr. Murdoch is here, content is captured in the report, but I'm happy to take any kind of questions around the report itself or the specifics of the policy and how it is implemented.
Any questions about the pay policy? Councillor Byron?
Not so much a question, but as we've discussed already, what we seek to do is to have a multi-year settlement in our external grant, and I think also, if we are feeding back into the NJC, it's that we would like to see a multi-year, as we had we've just come out of a multi-year settlement with the FBU now, and if we could have a multi-year settlement, that would be very much welcome, and would give us a certain degree of knowing where we stand and settlement and so forth. Also, with the NJC, it looks as though the widening the role issues might well be sort of back on the table. Some of the stuff that we parked some years ago might well be able to be discussed again, and I won't go into too much detail on that, but there's a lot happening. I believe that what I heard through the NJC was that the FBU have been saying that the current situation is the best climate of industrial relations that they can remember for a long time. And this is the report back from the officers at the NJC to the FSMC yesterday, which is good, of course, but it relies upon us understanding what a proper settlement is, and as I said before, not undervaluing the worth of our staff by comparison to the rest of the public sector.
Thanks, Chair. If I may just respond just in relation to reinforcing some of the conversations which are happening at a ministerial level, really. The first ministerial advisory group was commenced on the 4th of December. That's something that probably all parties of, so trade unions, National Fire Chiefs Council, my own views, is beneficial in kind of dealing with some of the ongoing issues affecting kind of terms and conditions of pay being aspect of that, and that does allow for conversations about the role of the fire rescue service and the role of firefighters then be revisited as part of that governance structure. So I can understand why that's being played back in that way, which is something that certainly the 5-year union have been keen to champion, and that's been facilitated as of the 4th of December.
Councillor Murray.
Thanks, Joe. Apprenticeship roles, item 18. I really welcome the fact that we're paying the national minimum wage for apprentices. But I just wanted to ask here, it says we provide a number of non-established temporary apprenticeship roles. I'm not quite sure what that means. Thank you.
Yeah, so I suppose it's the opportunity for young people to get a foot into employment, and so we would bring in a number of apprenticeship roles. So I'll use community safety advisory roles by way of examples of community safety advisory apprenticeship. Now we may have 2 vacancies within the community safety team, but we may choose to utilise that money to some degree in the first instance to employ more than 2 apprentices. So we would employ maybe 6 apprentices, have them develop and grow with the service, knowing that there's an opportunity for employment at the end of that, and so then they would be able to seize on the employment opportunities or be able to redirect them somewhere else in the organisation. And so sometimes we will carry the individual to give them an opportunity to progress, and sometimes those individuals move out and take on roles and jobs elsewhere, and sometimes we keep them, and we will continue to develop them further into prevention roles in the future.
I think that's wonderful. Very creative word. Thank you.
It was just on the apprenticeship side of it all, because obviously there's quite a bit of change going on in terms of what DWP are doing, what the Department for Education do. I'm just wondering whether there's been any discussions or any mention of sort of shorter, sharper apprenticeship roles or opportunities within the fire service. I know it's been sort of mooted or it's been discussed in terms of like construction sector and various other sectors, but I just wanted to know whether it's sort of been extended to fire service, and just to see about some of the younger aspects as well, because there's a lot of reshaping and rethinking on the way the levy is going to work as well.
Yeah, okay, so I suppose fortunately, another role that I fulfil for the authority, I am the chair of the Protected Services Route Panel for the apprenticeship, or the Institute of Apprenticeship, so I'm very familiar with the transition from where they are now to Skills England at a future point in time, and the landscape is changing significantly. Now, in the first instance, the apprenticeship standards that are currently in place for fire and rescue won't change significantly. They will transition from one place to the next in the future. But what is recognised as part of some of those conversations, that actually the length of some of the standards is a barrier for employment for some young people, and certainly for some of the employers as well. And so I think over the course of probably the next 18 months to 2 years, the employment offer from the Skills England will differ significantly. I think they also recognise that the apprenticeship levy, being just solely applicable to apprenticeships, may well need to change as well to reflect a multitude of opportunities that will be created for someone to transition from education into employment through a mechanism which is supported through Skills England. As I say, even in the most recent kind of conversations, I don't think they are 100% of how that will look, but what's self-evident is a real recognition of the change from the Institute to moving under Skills England, and then the opportunities reflecting the employer's need and the employee's need.
And just on that then, I mean, do you see that as a positive for fire service?
Do I see this? But I don't know in the honest answer, because actually some of the apprenticeship standards that have been developed up until this point give us assurance around the level of competency to undertake the role. I'm sure there are shorter duration examples which would be beneficial for the fire and rescue service in the first instance. I think until we know exactly what that looks like and what technical competency someone's got to be able to demonstrate, then the jury's out. What we certainly, and I certainly don't want to do is if you use firefighter by way of example, it's a really robust process. You know, we have an individual for a couple of years, they have an endpoint assessment and so on and so forth, and we are really, really successful and really effective. I wouldn't necessarily want that to change because of the level of competencies that would need to be demonstrated, and equally I wouldn't want to dumb down a process because some employers are struggling to recruit in, and so they make it easier and the standard drops. So there's a whole raft of work to be, there's a balance and there's a whole raft of work to be done there to provide the reassurance that the course is shorter and the standard is maintained. So yeah, work in progress, I think.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just
Councillor Rennie?
As the chair mentioned, I mean, we went over here and we had spent some time in the control room. We went over to Vestey to see some of the fantastic work, obviously, that goes on there, and the opportunity there to recruit young people, you know, has got to be really attractive for them. I would have thought, and then it raises the issue: well, how do we keep hold of them? You know, at the end of those, can you just tell me a little bit more about the type of work that goes on in opportunities for them in the likes of Vestey?
Yeah, and look, we've got apprentices in a multitude of areas of the service, and it goes back way before the levy. In fairness, it's something that we introduced on the basis of doing the right thing and creating opportunities for young people across Merseyside, because there's obvious inequalities there for employment. You know, examples of the Prince's Trust and being able to be the catalyst for future employment in whatever sector and whatever role. So fire control, so emergency control handler, so somebody takes the calls and mobilises and dispatches resources. That's an apprenticeship standard, and we link into the apprenticeship standards around engineering, centre of excellence, and so on and so forth. So we will always seek to create those opportunities for young people, because like anything else, for the individual it's a really good thing because someone has given them an opportunity, and for us we build a relationship with them, and they know as an employer we are an incredibly good employer, and then they are likely then to stick with us for a long period of their career. So yeah, we look at, I think the answer is that we look to create those opportunities for young people in this organisation, and we will continue to do that irrespective of some of the changes in the levy.
Any further comments? All right, well, it's recommended that members approve the publication of the authority's pay policy and note the pay awards for 2024 have now all been agreed and implemented as set out on page 321. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us to item 11, which is the Worker Protection Act and the prevention of sexual harassment in the workplace.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'll start this report, and I may well draw on Mia to add some more detail to it as we go. But you'll note that there has been changes to the introduction of the Worker Protection Act, particular focus on prevention of sexual harassment in the workplace as part of this report. And the purpose of the report is to update members on the requirements of the Worker Protection Amendment to of the Equality Act 2010 Act 2023, and the work stream established to meet our duties under the legislation. And the recommendations, it's recommended that members note the duty on employers to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority employees in course of their employment. Note the work stream established to ensure that the authority meets its legal duties under the Act, and approve the refreshed policy, which is, and again I may well come back to this because I may well seek to change a little bit of the language, and the bullying harassment policy subject to any significant changes which emerge from the ongoing consultation with the representative bodies being reported back as necessary, and I may preempt a little bit of that in a second. But by way of introduction, the Equality Act 2010 contains provisions, and it has done, to protect against sexual harassment and other forms of harassment related to protected characteristics, including protected characteristics of sex, This has been amended by the newly introduced Worker Protection Amendment, which came into force on the 26th of October 2024. The main aspects of the amendment: it creates a new duty on employers to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of an employee, and it provides that if a tribunal finds an employer has failed to take reasonable steps to prevent the harassment, then it can increase the compensation award by 25%. They're the two main aspects of the amendment itself. The report itself on page 338 goes on to talk about harassment as defined within the Equalities Act, but if I draw you into more specific ones related to this particular paper, examples of conduct of a sexual nature are detailed in paragraph 8, and it includes sexual comments or jokes displaying sexual graphic images on posters, and goes on to suggest suggestive looks, staring, leering, propositions and sexual advances and so on and so forth. All things that without the amendment we would act on anyway, but notwithstanding that, it is strengthened in relation to two aspects aforementioned in paragraph 4. The paper itself goes on to talk about the work of the work streams and details some of the areas that we would recommend to adopt or improve in relation to it. And then paragraph 15 talks about the work done to date to reflect those 8 specific areas. And a bit that's probably I'd suggest to members, because it reflects back a little bit on step 1, to develop an effective anti-harassment policy. Well, actually, we have a bullying and harassment policy. I think members, if you are minded to, I may look to change that bullying and harassment policy to be an anti-bullying and harassment policy.
Prevention of, yeah.
It seems to be more of a preventative approach rather than just a way of referring back in if you come across these issues. So very much reflective of the step 1 of the approach that we want to adopt to meet the duty, and that's just a simple amendment to the policy if members are minded to. I can take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Murray.
I was just minded, as you mentioned that, Chief, that whistleblowing might need reviewing as well. I think, and I'm not sure what the impact would be on anonymous whistleblowing for effect, because third party reporting, because it might be the victim doesn't actually have the confidence to come forward, or mightn't even recognise that that's abusive. And I'm just wondering if those threats are running through all our policies that would be relevant, and the same for anti-racism and harassment. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is conversations that we've had about the refresh of the whistleblowing policy. Because there's two things that are happening. There's a distinct difference really in relation to whistleblowing and the kind of auspices of it and the purpose of it, and also Safecall, which is what we've the authority have introduced more latterly for staff who have a concern to raise. It's not necessarily falls within the definition of a whistleblowing concern. And it might be something lower level, but it's affecting them in the workplace. And so making sure, and we have done some of this communication internally, people know and understand what whistleblowing is and understand what raising a concern looks like. Now we have to build the confidence of our staff to be able to flag those lower level areas of concern so we can act and deal with them. We don't get inundated with people coming forward, how to deal with it, or they are a little reluctant to say that person X is saying some stuff that they don't particularly like, and allow us to intervene in a relatively sensitive way really, and we're starting to build that up, and we've got a refresh of the Safecall approach to provide people with the kind of assurance that it is independently run, it is discreet, and we will just act on the information that we receive, and not necessarily go to look at who, how and when it was recorded. But we are clear that there is a differential between whistleblowing and raising a concern.
Second question, Chair, sorry. I'm not sure if I've read this in enough detail, but I just noticed here dealing with complaints and it says all internal complaints will be dealt with promptly. Are we stating timeframes anywhere? Because I think acknowledging a complaint in the first instance is the most important thing, so that people know they're being listened to. And then the timeline, to my mind, is really, really important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and look, I'll come back to ask Nick if we've got something specific for dealing with complaints, but you know, my understanding and my knowledge is, you know, as soon as we get a complaint in from a member of the public, I'll come back to staff in a second, the member of the public, and we acknowledge that complaint, then we follow that up probably within 24 hours, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, how you resolve that complaint could take longer than that, because it may warrant an in-depth investigation, or it may be something ultimately that we can't resolve for the individual for a variety of reasons, and so they still might feel aggrieved with the situation, but the you know, due process will have been kind of concluded. So we're pretty proficient at that. And if you then talk about complaints raised by a member of staff, you know, so grievance or concerns, then we would fall in line with the arrangements that are in place within the detailed in the Grey Book, and ACAS guidance really around periods of time to investigate grievances and also disciplinary matters as well. Again, sometimes they extend, but not you know, but we continue to keep people abreast of the reasons why it's taken longer than the requisite kind of levels and time period. So as expediently as possible, certainly with complaints, we would deal with them pretty instantaneously.
Yeah, no, I think you've summarised that fairly well, Chief. I think what we do is within 48 hours, people will get acknowledgements, so it'll come through. We picked up a lot of them coming electronically now. Picked up within 48 hours, acknowledged. As Phil says, then we're within the Grey Book, which is 14 days to begin to look and process. If we can't deliver it within 14 days, we'll go back to the individual to say, because of X, Y, and Z, we need to extend. And then at that time, we'll play them out appropriately, because it is getting a balance right between giving it enough scrutiny and enough insight to make sure that we come first time round to get hopefully a reasonable outcome for the individual. So we're bound, but extend as and where we feel appropriate.
Thank you.
Councillor Byron.
Thank you. Although this is the last item on the agenda, it's actually in many respects the most important item on the agenda. The reputational risk of getting this right or getting this wrong are very, very important for the members of the authority and the authority itself. Some people say, you know, how big is your complaint department? And we know that a very small part of RIA is our complaints department, whereas the police have dozens, and the national organisation, hundreds that deal with that sort of complaint. We are not a very litigant service. We don't get a lot of complaints. So when we do get them, we have to deal with them very seriously. Last year, I mean, nobody ever writes to me normally as chair of the authority. I did get some last year. An MP wrote on behalf of a constituent demanding a public inquiry and that sort of thing. And I wrote back and said, you are aware that under the Public Inquiries Act that can only be called for by the Secretary of State. You know, these are, I don't belittle it, but nothing really that you can deal with. However, we do have to have a proper process in place. We also have to have the mindset and culture properly in place. And from that point of view, we have a legal requirement to promote equality. And so we've spoken about making changes to our toilet facilities so that they are not just badged as disabled, but this is accessible, male and female. If male or female want to use a private cubicle for whatever purpose, that it's there available for them. We have to take into account many of the human requirements of those people, staff and the public who may visit this building and all of our buildings. And we have to look again at exactly how we work. Listen to our networks. We've got staff networks, great staff networks, working with our staff along for the things that they're doing. You know, when staff come to us and say, these particular uniforms don't fit properly, what are you going to do about it? Well, we've taken that on. This particular premises didn't have proper ablution, sort of showering and changing facilities, what we're going to do about it. Well, you can't maybe just do it that day, but you have to put it into the programme for capital expenditure to make the changes, to ensure that our premises and our staff are fit for the purpose, and the purpose is everybody is treated equally in mind as well as in practice. And we're going to be tested on this. We're going to be tested seriously by the inspectorate as to what we do, how we do it, and how far we've gone down the road of making these cultural changes. And we all want Merseyside to be at the top of that pile. We all want Merseyside to be leading on behalf of the rest of the country. There's a report going just at the moment about Gloucestershire, and things happening in Gloucestershire. We need to reflect on some of these things. I've asked for a separate to the LGA at the East Midlands to try and organise a conference on some of the outcomes from that independent report. We need to be looking at some of the things going on. Fortunately, they're not the things that are happening in ourselves as far as we are aware. But we must always be asking the questions. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor.
It's just on 15B is the e-learning package. When will that actually be rolled out then?
Subject to the agreement of the opponent.
Yeah.
It's in his list.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah, training is important. Training of all of this is very
No,
important.
that was it. It was only that in relation to the. I assumed that was the case, but it was just in case there was any
It's been through
modifications
some
to it.
internal quality assurance and some testing with various stakeholders to check that it hits the mark and it will deliver what we want to do, and we're happy.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I've just done some training at Sefton with the Northwest employers, and they're quite good as well.
Okay. So with that being said, we've got recommendations on page 337, recommendations A, B and C. And I think the Chief proposed a change to the name of the policy to put anti in front of it. With those recommendations being proposed, are they agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. The next meeting is on the 20th of March. So that brings us to the close. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
A happy Christmas to one and all. Hope